So we will continue our discussion from the first canto, 10th chapter, verse 22. So this is the ongoing pastime of Krishna departing from Hastinapur, and specifically discussing. We will be discussing the prayers of the ladies of Hastinapur, the glorification and the prayers. So as usual, we'll start with the Manglacharan. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udirayet. Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavatir Naishtaki Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namine. So, reading from 110:22. Seva bhuya nijavirya choditam swajiva mayam prakritim shishrakshatim anama rupatmani rupanamani vidit samano anushashara shastakrit. The personality of Godhead, again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels, the living entities, placed them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. So, quick recap: this is the prayers by the ladies of Hastinapur, which started from the previous verse, from verse 21, and I'll read that for continuity. So in verse 21 they said, "Here he is, the original personality of Godhead as we definitely remember him. He alone existed before the manifested creation of the modes of nature, and in him only, because he is the Supreme Lord, all living beings merge, as if sleeping at night, their energy suspended." So, so we had mentioned that 4 verses. So the prayers are 16 verses from 21 to 36, and then we noted also that from 21, 4 verses start with Savai, which is the ladies pointing to Krishna on the chariot. So if you remember, the ladies are on the roof of the palaces, and Krishna is on the chariot that is passing on the street below. So they're talking to one another, and they say Savai, Savai, which means they're pointing to this Krishna. So earlier on, they have glorified him as one that existed before the material creation, and one who exists after the destruction of the material world. And they do that to indicate that Krishna is not material, because he comes before the material creation. He cannot have any material aspects to him, and the same also because he exists after the material annihilation, there cannot be any material aspects to him. In this verse, where they are saying that the personality of our Godhead, desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels, places them under the guidance of material nature. So here they're essentially describing a relationship between Krishna and the conditioned souls. And the verse is a little bit so it's a verse that contains within it the Vaishnava philosophy of material creation. More specifically, the relationship between Krishna and the conditioned souls. And in order to kind of unwrap the philosophy, the best way is to kind of unwrap it through a implied conversation. So the ladies of Hastinapur are saying that Sahaeva, this is that Krishna who creates a place for some spirit souls in this incompatible material world. So some spirit souls meaning that only the Nityabadas, and the incompatible material world means this is not their actual world. So so we take on the role of the inquirer. The inquirer says, which spirit souls? The ladies of Hastinapur say, those who are Nityabadas. Why does he do that? In order to fulfill the desires, he has awarded Vidit Samana a material identity. So this is the ladies of Hastinapur saying that this is why he does this. To fulfill their desires, Vidit Samana, he has given them a material identity. So the inquirer can ask, what kind of material identity? And then the ladies say, an identity that is characterized by names and forms. Under this illusion, the jivas identify themselves with forms. So they say Rupa Atmani. Atmani means self. Rupa Atmani means they're saying that I am this form, and then Rupa Namani. And then they give the form a name. So the inquirer will ask, so does that mean that the jivas previously did not have any names and forms? And the ladies say they are anama, without any material designations. They only previously had spiritual names and forms. And then they say anushashara, that by placing them under mayam prakritim, under the illusion of the material energy, they get recreated. Shishra kshatim, recreated material names and forms. So they're saying, yes, they initially did have names and forms, but they were different. Now, they did not have any material, they were anam, they were material designations. But now what Krishna does is anushashar, that so anushasana, we know, anushasana meaning under the dominion. So anushashar is a derivative that basically placing them he places them under control of mayam prakriti, of prakriti is material nature and mayam is illusion, under the illusion of the material nature. And what happens under this illusion? That they get recreated. So they get shishra kshatim, they get recreated material names and forms like devas, danavas, asuras, manav, etc. So then the inquirer may ask that if Krishna is taking help of Prakriti, does that mean that Prakriti is more powerful than Krishna? And then the ladies say no. Nijavirya chodita. That he says, actually this Prakriti is empowered by Krishna only to do this. So it's not that Krishna is incapable of doing it, but he is delegating and empowering Prakriti. Nijavirya. Nijavirya means by his own potency. His choditam is that he empowers. So then the inquirer takes a checkpoint and says, okay, now I understand. There are some rebellious jivas who want to enjoy separately from Krishna. In order for them to do so, he personally empowers Prakriti with the power of bewildering them into thinking that they are material names and forms. And then he just leaves them there. The lady says, no, he does not abandon them because they are foolish. In order to give them the opportunity to engage in karma, jnana, yoga, and bhakti, he has also created the scriptures, Shastra Krat, even before he empowered Prakriti. So the ladies say that to indicate that Krishna is not punishing them. It's kind of like he's putting somebody in the prison, but even before he creates the prison, even before he puts the lock on the prison door, he leaves the key inside the prison. So that's why they say Shastakrit, that he has already created the scriptures and left that in the material world even before the jivas have entered the material world. So then the inquirer says, do the jivas take advantage of this and go back to him? And the ladies say, unfortunately, not always, which is why they say bhuya, which is why he does this whole thing again and again and again. Bhuya means repeatedly. So now the inquirer says that why does he go to such great lengths for these obstinate, rebellious, ungrateful jivas? So look at it from Krishna's perspective. So firstly, these jivas are rebellious. They rejected. So then they come down to the material world. In order to satisfy the perverted desires, Krishna has now given them the opportunities by giving them differentiated names and forms. Now, in addition to that, what he is giving is also an opportunity for them to escape from the material world by giving them the Shastakrat. Even if they don't take that opportunity, Krishna is doing that again and again and again. So then the inquiry says, why does he care so much? And then the ladies say, Swajiva, because these jivas are his own, because he loves them as if they are his own. So this verse, as we had initially said, that the prayers are begin with the mood of Tattva Darshan. So this is the foundation verses that describe Krishna's potency and position. What is he doing? Why is he doing what he is doing in the material world? So earlier on, they had identified Krishna as completely spiritual. Now they have in this verse, and this is, as we had said, it is a complex verse. They have described the whole purpose of the creation of the material world, because the material world in itself is just a shell. It's not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. And the ladies in this verse are describing that. Why does Krishna create this? What is he trying to achieve? Okay, so we'll do the next verse, 110:23. Savayam yat padam atra suryo jitendra nirjitamata rishvanaha pashanti bhaktya utkalit atmalatmana nanvaisha sattvam parimar sutam arati. Here is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees who are completely cleansed of material consciousness by dint of rigid devotional service and full control of life and the senses. And that is the only way to purify existence. So once again, they start with by say Sava I am. Here is again. So far they have been speaking about tattva, about, and more specifically, even though they're pointing to Krishna, but they're talking about the Vishnu tattva. Specifically, they're talking about the Purusha avatars, and they're doing that to indicate Krishna's relationship with the material world. Now they are speaking about Krishna Swayam Bhagwan. Specifically, they're speaking about Krishna who appeared in the Dwapar Yuga of the 28th Chatur Yuga of Vaivasthaman. And they're speaking about the Krishna that they're personally seeing on the chariot while standing on the rooftops. So how do they glorify him? So they say that Suryaha Arhati Pashyanti. So Surya means great devotees. Arhati means deserve to see what? The lotus feet or the form of the Lord, Padma. So Padma means lotus, and lotus as a glorification is applied to both the feet and the form of Krishna. So they're saying that only great devotees deserve to see the lotus feet or form of the Lord. So what kind of great devotees? Those who control Nirjita Matra Ishvana, their life air Jitendriya, and their senses. So those who control both the gross body and the subtle body. So Indriya, the five senses, these are there as part of our gross body, and the life air, the Matra Ishvana, this is what the yogis control. And how do they control it? They say by Atmana. Atmana means by their intelligence. So specifically when they say Atmana, so specifically when they say Atmana, they are referring to the intelligence that is enlivened by bhakti. So in the Katha Upanishad, it is said, Esha sarva bhuteshu gudo atma no prakashate darshyate tvargaya buddhya sukshmai sukshma drashvi. Krishna is in all living entities, but is not visible. He can only be seen by eager intelligence with the subtle vision of the seers of the subtle. So the ladies, after having declared that devotees see Krishna by their Atmana, by their purified intelligence, they clarify that this is not a process of endeavor, but it is a process of mercy. So they say, certainly, Nanu, it is bhakti and not other processes like Gyan or yoga that completely purify. Parimarthasam, the intelligence, sattva. The implication is that being a sage and conquering the senses, etc., is automatically accomplished by bhakti alone and not by pranayam or other processes. And Prabhupada makes this point in the purport. He says that the artificial means of the yogic process to make the senses inactive has proved to be an abject failure, even in the case of great yogis like Vishwamitra Muni. And then later on, he says that in the case of a pure devotee, the senses are not at all artificially stopped from doing anything, but they are given different good engagements. When the senses are engaged, they become more attractive activities. There is no chance of one being attracted by any inferior engagements. In the Bhagavad Gita, and this Prabhupada in the purport he writes in italics, in the Bhagavad Gita it is said that the senses can be controlled only by better engagements. So does anybody remember which verse in Bhagavad Gita Prabhupada is referring to over here? So this is a famous, it's famous because it's called the higher taste verse.
Rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. I don't know the first line, Prabhu.
Right, thank you, Prabhu. So it's a Vishaya Vinivartante Nirarasya Dehinam Rasuvarjam Rasopyasya Param Drishtva Nivartate. So Prabhupada is saying that only the sages who are eager with bhakti see the Lord. And the ladies, when they say this, they use the present continuous tense. They don't use the past tense. And the acharyas say that the reason they are using the present continuous because this facility is available to everybody at all points of time. So this is not something that was only available in the ancient times or will be available at some particular place in Vrindavan or in some particular universe. They're using the present continuous to say that at all places, at all points of time, anybody who is enlivened by the process of bhakti is empowered to see the pastimes and the form of Krishna. So Prabhupada later on in the purport, he talks about this process of being able to see Krishna. And now he's talking to us. So he's speaking on the same mood of the ladies of Hastinapur, because in the later part of the verse, they're preaching to us. Prabhupada also is preaching. So he says the Vasudeva conception gradually develops in the heart of the learned after a prolonged acceleration of the receptive organs. But the process ends in the knowledge of accepting Vasudeva as all in all. And this, of course, is a almost a very word-by-word translation of one of the verses in Bhagavad Gita. So Vasudeva conception gradually attends, and accepting Vasudeva is all in all. Right? So this is that verse in Bhagavad Gita in the chapter 7. Bahunam Jamanamante Jnanaman Mam Prapadyante Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatmas Durlubha. And then Prabhupada goes on to say, in the case of devotional service, this very same method is accepted from the very beginning, and by the grace of God, all factual knowledge becomes revealed in the heart of a devotee due to the dictation by the Lord from within. So here again, Prabhupada is quoting another famous verse. So this verse, does anybody remember? How the Lord from within clears away misunderstandings and gives us the knowledge to see him. This is one of the Chaturshloki verses in Bhagavad Gita. Tesham evanukam partaham agyan jamtamo nashyame atma bhavasto gyan dipena me bharata. So in this verse, the focus of the prayers have now transitioned from Krishna Purushavatar as Krishna Swayam Bhagavan. And not only have they turned the focus to Krishna Swayam Bhagavan, they have also revealed the way to access, which is through the process of Shuddha Bhakti. Okay, we'll do the next verse. This is 1024. Savayam Sakyanugita Satkatho Vedeshu Guyeshu Chaguya Vadvi Yaikaisho Jagat Atma Lilaya Sajate Avateyati Na Tatra Sajate. Oh dear friends, here is that very personality of Godhead, whose attractive and confidential pastimes are described in the confidential parts of Vedic literatures by his great devotees. It is he only who creates, maintains, and annihilates the material world and yet remains unaffected. So this verse is a kind of a summarization of the previous three verses that they have spoken. So in verse 22 and 23, they had, or actually more in verse 22, they had glorified Krishna in 22-21. They had glorified Krishna in relationship to the material world. Then in the next verse, in verse 23, they had glorified Krishna as Swayam Bhagwan. Now in this verse, they are trying to establish the relationship between these two personalities. So 21-22 was Purush Avatar, 23 is Swayam Bhagwan. Now they're trying to dispel any confusion that they're speaking about different people. So that is why they're saying that here is that very personality of Godhead who creates, maintains, and annihilates. So they're saying that the two-armed form is the source of the Purush avatars that deal with the material world. So they use this singular noun, or rather pronoun. They say Ekaha Isha, that he is the only one supreme controller, Jagadatma. He is the only one super soul of the complete creation. He Srajati, he creates, Avati, maintains, and Ati, he destroys, Na Tatra Sajate. But he himself is never affected by it. So, and this verse, at least in this setting, we won't go into a lot of discussion because this is the core belief of Vaishnava philosophy, of Krishna being the source of Lord Vishnu, and the Purush avatars, of Krishna alone taking care, the Krishna not being one of the trilogy of maintenance, creation, destruction. So all these tattvas, we've kind of grown on this. But in another setting, this is actually a very powerful preaching word because it establishes the tattva so unequivocally. That they've spoken about the Purush avatars, they've spoken about Krishna, now they're speaking about the relationship. That this Krishna is the basis of the Purush avatars. So one may question, and this is the person who was hearing about how Krishna gives the conditioned jivas an opportunity in the material world to come back. So one may question that if Krishna is Swayam Bhagwan, why does not everybody surrender to him? So this question was relevant at that time, 5,000 years ago, is relevant now, and then it's relevant every time. So the ladies say, Anugita Sat Katho Vedeshu Guyeshu, that this information about Krishna is Anugita Sat Katha Vedeshu Guyeshu, that it is only available in the most confidential part of the scriptures and is only described by his most confidential devotees. So they say Guya Vadabi. Vadabi means description and Guya means confidential. So it is present in the confidential part of the Vedas and it is described by the most confidential devotees. That is why this information is not widely available. Prabhupada in the purport says the Vedas are expanded by many branches and sub-branches by great devotees and empowered incarnations of the Lord. And then he speaks about the 12 Mahajans, the Vyas, Narad, Sukadev, etc. But in the Srimad Bhagavatam especially, the confidential part of these activities are described by confidential devotees like Sukadev Goswami. So Prabhupada is connecting this to the glorification of the Bhagavatam by the ladies of Hastinapur. So they're saying while this information is available only in very confidential part of the scriptures described by very confidential devotees, but because Krishna is merciful, he has made this information available in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is how that is the key that Krishna leaves behind for the devotees to find. And then in the rest of the purport, Prabhupada talks about what does the rest of the Vedas talk about. So he says that in the Vedanta Sutras, Upanishad, there's only a hint of the confidential parts of his pastimes. In such Vedic literatures as the Upanishads, the Lord has expressively been distinguished from mundane conception of his existence. His identity being fully spiritual, his form, name, quality, paraphernalia, etc., have been elaborately distinguished from matter. And therefore, he is sometimes understood by less intelligent persons as impersonal. But factually, he is the Supreme Person, Bhagwan, and is partially represented as Paramatma, an impersonal Brahman. So Prabhupada is making the point that the rest of the scriptures predominantly talk about the distinction between matter and spirit. And because the nature of making this distinction is pervasive, that matter is everywhere and it is distinguished from spirit, it lends itself to an impersonal conception, but only in the very confidential part of the scriptures, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, some of the Upanishads, like the Gopal Tapani Upanishad, is Krishna spoken about as Swayam Bhagwan. So this verse, like I said, is also the ladies glorifying the Bhagavad Purana. Okay, it's been speaking for about half an hour, so I'll take a break and see if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances. Just a comment and maybe a shade of a question. I was just wondering the ladies of Hastinapur, they are very technical. They're talking about the matter, soul, and the subtle body and all that. So I was wondering, in those days, the ladies were never going to Gurukul, or they didn't have so much of technical knowledge. They had bhakti, but they didn't have technical knowledge. How is it that the ladies they have this kind of deep technical knowledge?
So thank you. That's a good question. So this is one of the things that we talk about often, is how Gyan gets subsumed within Vigyan. So devotees have realizations And within realization, we have really intricate details of knowledge that Vigyan automatically carries with it Gyan. So the fact that they have personal association of Krishna automatically puts them at the level of exalted souls. At one point, Krishna, Srila Prabhupada, not for the ladies of Hastinapur, but for the citizens of Dwarka, he says that they're all pure devotees. And so one can assume the same because similar interaction. So they are at that level, and they have realizations, and they have the necessary knowledge. We see the similar mood in prayers by Kunti Devi. When she begins the prayers, then she speaks very dense philosophy in the first 2-3 verses, and then later on it becomes more and more rasa. She talks more and more Vatsalya Bhav, to a lesser extent, but we see that also in terms of prayers by Uttara. First 2 verses, the glorification of Krishna's position, and then asking for protection over there.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, so we'll go to the next verse, 110:25. Yada haya dharmena tamadhiyo nripa जीवन्ति तत्रेषहि सत्त्वतः किल तते भगं सत्यं ऋतं दयां यशो भवाय रूपाणि ददद्युगे युगे. Whenever there are kings and administrators living like animals in the lowest mode of existence, the Lord in his transcendental form manifests his supreme power, the truth positive, shows special mercy to the faithful, performs wonderful activities, and manifests various transcendental forms as is necessary in different periods of ages. So, can anybody relate this verse to verses in Bhagavad Gita?
यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत
Yes.
अभ्युत्थानम् अधर्मस्य.
So this relates to both the verses in the Bhagavad Gita, starting from Yada Yada Hi Dharmasya. So far the ladies have glorified Krishna as being non-material, fully spiritual, as the cause and the end of the material world, and also as the well-wisher for the conditioned souls, that he creates it so that they can come and enjoy and try to purify themselves. They have also established the difference between Krishna Swayam Bhagwan as the basis of the Purush avatars, in which he interacts, even though fully detached from the material world. In this verse, they speak about Krishna's interaction with the material world while it is existing. So they have talked about before and after, creation and annihilation. In terms of the existence of the material world, they have talked about the interaction of the material world with the jivas, that it is there for them to fulfill the perverted desires and also for them to purify them. Now they're talking about the interaction of the material world with Krishna. So in this way, they're talking about the 3 aspects of the interaction: creation, maintenance, and destruction. So this verse we don't have to speak a lot because we are very very familiar with the essence of this verse, discussed this many times in, in the Bhagavad Gita. Some of the points to call out is that uh, they say that tatra hi isha kila dhate. So, so they say only tatra hi, that thereupon only Isha, only Krishna kila dhate, that he certainly manifests sattvata. Sattvata means so sat is means spiritual. So the point they're making that he comes in a spiritual form. So even though the Krishna standing in front of them is indistinguishable from the other people around him, but they said don't become fooled by it. When he comes he comes as Sattvata. He comes in his transcendental form. Sattvata also means leader of devotees. So Sattvata means he who leads those who are sattva, who are pursuing the spiritual life as a leader of the devotees. And when Krishna comes, he's always Krishna. So regardless of what form he is, whether he's child or old or young or whatever, he's always Krishna. So they say, Bhagyam Satyam Ritam Dayam Yasho. So when he comes Bhagam. So Bhagam means that he comes with all his opulences, the 6 opulences that Parashrami talks about. He comes with all of them. Then Satyam. Satyam means again Sat, that he comes in a spiritual form. Satyam also means that he comes to speak the truth. And this they're specifically referring to Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita. So he has come with his 6 opulences. He has spoken the truth, Ritam, in pleasing words. So he spoke the Bhagavad Gita so mellifluously, in a way that pleased everybody. Whether there is something in Bhagavad Gita, it's not a coincidence that Bhagavad Gita attracts everybody. So if you look at the back of the Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada publishes, some of the people that he quotes are actually atheists. Some of them are impersonalists. But they are attracted to Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because Satyamrita, that he speaks pleasing words he speaks the truth in a pleasing words. And then he performs out of the mercy dayam yasho, wonderful activities. So they're pointing to the human activities that he has performed, like lifting of the Govardhan, the orchestration of the battle of Mahabharata. So they're glorifying this Krishna. And why does he do that? Bhavaya, for the maintenance of the world, material world, Rupani Dadat. And in order to do that, he will come yuge yuge. That he will come Rupani Dadat means that in many forms. The point they're making is that this is not the Krishna that we are seeing is not the only Krishna that comes to the material world. Rupani Dadat, in many forms, he will come yuge yuge. He will come again and again. So, as we discussed, this verse is very similar, but because it's the Bhagavatam, deeper realization, they give us a little deeper insight into Krishna's interaction over here. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that the same acknowledgement of Krishna's form and activities has been already done in 1918 by Bhishma Dev. Later on in 10:14:14, Lord Brahma will do it. And Narad Muni will also reinforce the same point in the 5th and 6th chapters, or has reinforced the same points in the 5th and 6th chapters. So this verse answers 2 questions. One is that if the world has been created by Krishna for the Nitya-baddhas who are by nature averse to him, why does he come again and again? And Prabhupada answers this in the purport. He says the material world is created to satisfy the whims of the Nitya-baddhas, or everlasting conditioned souls, just as naughty boys are provided with playing cradles. Otherwise, there was no need for the material world. But when they become intoxicated with the power of material science to exploit the resources unlawfully, without the sanction of the Lord, and that also for their sense gratification, there is necessity of the Lord's incarnation to chastise the rebellious and to protect the faithful. So Prabhupada says that even though the material world is like a prison, but even in the prison house, the prisoners can create more mischief. So the prison is for the mischief makers, but even when they are in the prison house, they can do more mischiefs because by nature they are mischief makers. So Krishna comes to see that the conditions in the prison house don't become out of hand. And the second point that Prabhupada makes that second question that may be asked is that if the Purush avatars deal with the material world, what is the need for Krishna as Swayam Bhagwan to come? And Prabhupada says, there is necessity of the Lord's incarnation to chastise the rebellious and protect the faithful. So more to protect the faithful than to chastise the rebellious. Okay, we'll do the next verse, 110:26. Aho alam slagyatmam yadokulam aho alam punyatamam madarvanam yadesha pumsham rishabhashriyapati swajanmana chankramanena chanchati. Oh, the aho alam is like exclamation of disbelief. They say, oh, how supremely glorified is the dynasty of King Yadu, and how virtuous is the land of Mathura, where the supreme leader of all living beings, the husband of the goddess of fortune, has taken his birth and wandered in his childhood. So, so now the ladies of Hastinapur are transitioning from philosophy to pastimes. So the last 5 verses were Tattvadarshi. They were talking about the underlying philosophy. Krishna, Purushavatar, material world, creation, maintenance, destruction, the reason why he comes, how can he be attained. Now they're talking about pastimes. So so now they are referring to Krishna as the person who has appeared in the Yaduvamsh and he moves around in the forest of Mathura. So the verse starts with Aho. That isn't it surprising? Or how can you believe that? That the same person that we talked of in the last 4 verses, and with all the glorification, took birth in Yaduvamsh, and who is moving around in Mathura. Now, the ladies in Hastinapur are Kuruvamshis, and in terms of status, they're a lot higher than the Yaduvamshis. So it's not that they're looking upon it like derogatory or anything like that, but still they're expressing surprise that he's come amongst the Yadus, and he's moving about in so they call Mathura as Madhuvanam, and they're referring to the ancient name of Mathura. So as we know that Mathura was named after, or was initially Madhuvan, and it was named because it was ruled by a demon called Madhu, who was a great devotee of Lord Shiv. And the demon had a very powerful son by the name of Lavnasur. So then in the Treta Yuga, Lord Ram, he sends Maharaj Shatrughan to fight the demon, and Maharaj Shatrughan fights and kills Lavnasur. And then he establishes the kingdom of Mathura. So, so it is referred to as Mathura, but it also referred to as by ancient named as Madhuvan. And then it does not, it includes the entire region of Mathura, including Vrindavan. So when they're looking at it, they're also talking about Krishna moving about in Vrindavan and Mathura. Um, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that um, if you look at the verse, the first two lines of the verse, they start with Aho Alam. Let's say, they say, how surprising it is that Krishna has appeared in the Yadakula. That how surprising it is that he has appeared in Madharvanam. But then they say Swajanmana Chankramananena Chanchati. They don't express any surprise in this line. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that do it because this line Chanchramati means he crawled around in the dust. Now he did that in Vrindavan. He did not do that in Mathura because he was a young man by the time he reached Mathura. So they don't express any ahoham. They don't experience any surprise because they are aware of the glories of Vrajdham. So while they're expressing surprise of Krishna appearing in Yaduvamsh, appearing in Madhuvan, but they're accepting the fact that uh, they call Vraja as Swajanmana, that in his own place of appearance, Vraja, he has been crawling around Chankramanena and Chanchati, and he's been performing other wonderful pastimes. Now, the interesting thing also is that when they talk this line, the tense changes. So the first two lines are in past tense, that he appeared in Madhuvan, he appeared in Yaduvamshi. But when they're talking about this line, what they're saying that he is crawling around the dust of Vraja, Swajanma, his own birthplace, and performing wonderful activities. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur indicates this, that the reason they use the present tense is because Krishna's Leela is continuous and uninterrupted. And then he goes on to a little bit long explanation, which I won't go because Prabhupada has spoken about this many times, that he talks about Nitya Leela. Right? Why are the Leelas called Nitya? Nitya means they are eternal. So eternal means that they are always happening. And how Vishnu Chakravarti explains this as the fact that because Krishna has many forms, he has many manifestations, each of the manifestation he has Leelas. Even before one Leela ends, it has begun at another place. And it is possible the same Leela is happening at many places simultaneously also. So we see that so if that was not true, then Bhishma Dev would not have prayed to always be associated with Parthasarthi, because he knew that Nita is that Leela is a Nitya Leela, right? Bhishma Dev is a Mahajan, so that is why he's saying that may I always meditate on Krishna as Parthasarthi, and then we are discussed over there because that Leela is Nitya Leela. Same points are being made by the ladies of Hastinapur, that all these Leelas are happening in different universes or within the universe in different planets at the same time. A kind of a related discussion about Krishna's manifestation So Prabhupada says that one should not be surprised that Krishna can manifest multiple forms. And he says we get a glimpse of that even within this universe. And where do we get the glimpse? Prabhupada talks about the fact that Krishna marries 16,000 wives, and he's independently associating with all the 16,000 wives. So there's a pastime in the Bhagavatam that comes in the 10th canto when Narad Muni, when he witnesses that, he's completely astonished by this. Now the acharyas say there's no reason for Narad Muni to be astonished, because this is a siddhi, this is a yogic siddhi. In the Bhagavatam we see Kardam Muni, when he wants to enjoy with Devahuti, he expands into 9 forms, and then he enjoys with her. Later on, we'll also see what's the rishi's name? Sabri Rishi. Right? When Sabri Rishi gets contaminated because of cursing Garud, then he develops the desire to enjoy uh, um, conjugally. So, in order to do so, he marries the 50 daughters of King Mandahata, and to enjoy with them, he expands himself into 50 forms. And these are just they are just yogis. Narad Muni himself is a yogi. But Prabhupada says, or the acharyas say, the reason that Narad Muni is astonished is because the 16,108 forms of Krishna with his wives are not expansions. They are Krishna himself. And even though they're Krishna himself, they're performing different activities. Say to say, somewhere he's performing the morning yajna, somewhere he is taking care of the children, somewhere he is associating with his wife. So the same Krishna, and we see that in the Rasa Leela also, same Krishna is there with everybody. So this is one of the things that it is difficult to understand, but it is what astonishes. It's not an expansion, but it is the same Krishna that is there everywhere. Tripurari Maharaj, he explains this, and so I'm giving this explanation with a caveat that this is not Prabhupada's explanation. This is Tripurari Maharaj, who also is a great scholar. So he says that the reason Narad Muni was astonished, because he could see that it was the same Krishna who was traveling between the 16,108 palaces. But he was traveling so fast that it appeared that he was continuously in all the palaces. So he's saying, think of it this way, that he goes there to one wife and he says, how are you? And then he goes to another wife and then he does the homa over there. He goes to the third wife and says, well, how are the children doing? Same Krishna. But he's doing it so quickly that for each of the wife, Krishna is never absent. So that is what bewildered Narad Muni. That this is something that is beyond the realm of mystic yogas. Another point over here is also mentioned that, and this is the Acharya is kind of churning the verse, that Prabhupada's purport is more or less an expansion on the Bhagavad Gita 4. I forget the Janma Karma Cha Me Divyam Yo Me Beti Tatvata. So it's more or less an expansion of that verse, where he says that the reason these deities are glorifying the birth and pastimes of Krishna is so that we can attain that perfection by trying to understand. 4.9, the verse. The Prabhupada purport is, like I said, it's more or less an expansion on 4.9, and strong preaching purport. So Prabhupada in the last para in the purport, he says that if simply by knowing the transcendental nature of the birth and activities of the Lord one can get liberation easily, we can just imagine what is in store for those who actually enjoy the company of the Lord in person, as a family member, or as a neighbor. All those who are fortunate enough to associate with the Lord, the husband of the goddess of fortune, certainly obtained something more than what is known as liberation. Therefore, rightly, the dynasty and the land are both ever glorious by the grace of the Lord. So Prabhupada over here is glorifying. He's glorifying everybody. He's glorifying the residents of Rajdham, the residents of Mathura Dham, the ladies of Hastinapur, because not only do they understand the Janma Karma Cha Devyam, but they have also been able to have the good fortune to associate personally with the person as a family member or a or a neighbor. Okay, I'll stop here and see if there are any questions.
Hare Krishna, Guruji. Just like, I mean, I'm just wondering, like, so we're seeing like this wow factor in this in this in the prayers, like, you know, I mean, like they're basically talking about the Purusha avatar, and then, you know, they're talking about the Swayam Bhagwan feature, and now they're talking about the pastimes of the Lord, but, you know, like they're talking like how wonderful they are, and, you know, the so basically, like, just like, you know, that wow factor of like how wonderful Krishna is. So is it because so I'm just wondering, are these set of prayers, is this also a type of prayers, basically, that that, you know, just basically to talk about Krishna's different feet, like, you know, different potencies and different um uh,
It is so. So I think so. So you're right. So when you're talking about the wow factor, you're talking about Krishna's Aishwarya Bhav. And yes, so far they're talking about the Aishwarya Bhav. Pretty soon they will talk about Krishna's kissing. So we'll see both the bhavs over here. And the acharyas the acharyas spend quite a bit of time, which we won't, but they spend quite a bit of time trying to reconcile these two rasas. That they start off in Aishwarya, and not in the next verse, but in the verse after that, then they say how lucky are the residents of the ladies of Dwarka who enjoy the sweet kisses of Krishna's lotus lips. So when you're reading it, then suddenly you say, what happened? You know, these are the ladies who are talking about Krishna as Purusha avatar, and as you said, you know, the wow factor. Now they're talking about Krishna in a completely different mode, but they are both reconciled in the prayers, and we'll discuss it in the verse. The acharyas use two different techniques to reconcile these bhavs. The other part that you said is, do we consider this as prayers? They're generally called prayers by the ladies. The setting for this is that they're discussing among themselves. So they're not standing in front of Krishna with folded arms and praying, but they're still considered as prayers because they're glorifying Krishna's Nam, Roop, Guna, Leela. So they're still considered as prayers. And the ladies are speaking it again for their own purification. So they're still considered as prayers.
thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, just a question. Um, so just like we have in spiritual planet, we have um, so we have Golok Vrindavan, and in this material plane we have Vrindavan, which is a manifestation of the Golok Vrindavan. Similarly, Dwaraka and Mathura and Ayodhya and all that. Is there a Hastinapur in the spiritual planet? Because all these citizens of Hastinapur, the ladies, they all look to be exalted. So is there a contemporary, the original Hastinapur in the spiritual plane?
It doesn't say it because I think in the next verse or one of the verses, Srila Prabhupada talks specifically about the three. He talks about Dwarka, Mathura, and Vrindavan, and he says these are the opportunities in the spiritual world. They are present, and the residents. The point you're making that the material manifestation is basically an extension. Prabhupada would call them as embassies from the spiritual world. Doesn't talk about Hastinapur there. So I don't know the answer to the question, but I haven't seen that anywhere.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move to the next verse, 110:27. Aho batsvarya, aho bataswar, yashas tirakskarai, kushastali punya, yashas kari bhuva, pashanti nityam yad, anugraha heshatam, smitavalkam swapatim, smayat prajaha. Undoubtedly, it is wonderful that Dwarka has defeated the glories of the heavenly planets and has enhanced the celebrity of the earth. The inhabitants of Dwarka are always seeing the soul of all living beings, Krishna, in his loving feature. He glances at them and favors them with sweet smiles. So, in the previous verse, the um, the ladies, they had implicitly glorified Hastinapur. And they're saying that we are able to see Krishna right in front of us. So we are fortunate to be in Hastinapur. Now they are glorifying Dwarka. And they do so by acknowledging the good fortune of the residents of Dwarka. Because Krishna may visit Hastinapur, but he lives in Dwarka. So that's why they say Dwarka is a lot more glorious. So they refer to, in the verse, they refer to Dwarka as Kushasthali. And Kushasthali is an ancient name of Dwarka. So Kushasthali is the name that was given to Dwarka by King Revat. So Revat's this is available in Mahabharata. It's also explained in the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam, the history of Dwarka. That from Lord's son, he had the son Vaivastamanu, who had a son Ikshvaku, whose grandson was Sharyati, and Sharyati was the one who established the kingdom of Anartha. And later on, the ladies will refer it to as Anartha also. So he established the kingdom of Anartha after his own son. He had a son named Anartha. So he named the kingdom as, I think the A is long, the first A is long, it's Anartha. It's not Anartha, Anartha. And Anartha had a son by the name of Revat. And he was the one who established the kingdom of Kushasthali, or the city of Kushasthali within Anartha. And then Revat had a famous son by the name of Kakudmi, or Maharaj Raivat, and he's famous because his daughter Revati is the wife of Lord Balram. And later on, Kushasthali, and this was before Krishna's time, So they established Kushastali. The Kushastali was conquered by the Asuras, and then there was a lot of war, and then basically the city became it kind of became like a abandoned city. And then Krishna, when he's looking for a place to relocate, then he takes the residents of Mathura, and then before he relocates them to Kushastali. But before that, he asks Vishwakarma to do a reconstruction. So that's why then he builds this wonderful city of Dwarka. Dwarka means the city of gates, so with glorious gates and arches. So the ladies of Hastinapur are comparing Dwarka with Swaryashas, with the glories of the heavenly planets. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that they're doing it because of deference. That we know the opulence of the heavenly planets, and Dwarka, you can compare it with that. But he says actually what they mean is that there is no comparison between Dwarka and the heavenly planets. The beauty and the opulence of Dwarka is infinitely more than that of the heavenly planets. And the main reason is that Krishna is personally over there. He does not go personally in Swarga, but he is there in Dwarka. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, three places, namely Vrindavan, Mathura and Dwarka, are more important than the famous planets within the universe. These places are purposefully sanctified because whenever the Lord descends to the earth, he displays his transcendental activities, particularly in these three places. And then towards the end of the purport, he says, any person engaged in the devotional service of the Lord is recommended to live in one of the above mentioned three places, namely Dwarka, Mathura or Vrindavan. Because devotional service in these three places is magnified. Those who go there to follow the principles in terms of instructions imparted in the revealed scriptures achieve the same result as obtained during the presence of Lord Shri Krishna. His abode and he himself are identical, and a pure devotee and the guidance of another experienced devotee can obtain all the results even at present. Okay, I'll do one more verse and then I'll see if there is, maybe I'll do two verses and then see if there's any questions. So 10:28. Nunam vrita snana huta dineshwaraha samarchito hayasya grihitapanabihi pibanti yaha sakhyadhar amritam muhur vrajastriya samu muhurayadashaya. Oh friends, just think of his wives whose hands he has accepted. How they must have undergone vows, baths, fire sacrifices, and perfect worship of the Lord of the universe to constantly relish now the nectar from his lips by kissing. The damsels of Rajabhumi would often faint just by expecting such favors. So the ladies of Hastinapur, they have glorified Dwarka by glorifying Dwarka as a place, by glorifying the good fortune of the residents of Dwarka because they can see Krishna. And now their attention goes to the queens of Krishna, and specifically Adhar Amritam, to the kissing of the queens and the Lord. So Jiva Goswami says, and I think this also is this is an answer to Achyuta's question. So Jiva Goswami says that in verse 21, Krishna is described in Shantaras or Aishwarya Bhav. In this verse, he is spoken in Shringaras. This is apparently Rasabhas. So these rasas don't mix well with one another. They seem to be incompatible. One way to resolve this conflict is that the earlier verses are spoken by a group of ladies who are in Shantaras this set of verses are spoken by ladies in Madhurya Vas. So he reconciles this one way, that because the rasas are so incompatible, they're spoken by different groups of ladies, and essentially what they're describing is a pastime between Krishna and his pure devotees, who are situated in their swarup. And Prabhupada, basically in the purport, he talks about the fact that this is an interaction between Krishna and his devotees in the spiritual identity. And he makes this point to make sure that we don't confuse this with mundane conjugal relationship. So the queens of Dwarka, they enjoy the lips of Krishna, not in the same way as there is experience of it in the material world, but in a way that we can only see through the eyes of the scriptures. The exalted interaction between Krishna and his pure devotees. And Prabhupada, he wants to call this out a little bit over here, because this is the first time in the Bhagavatam that Shringar Ras comes. It comes very fleetingly. They don't expand on this. It comes and goes there. But nevertheless, it comes. So Prabhupada, at this point, he wants to make a point that the reader is aware of the tattva behind it. Then the ladies also, they say that these queens, they must have done vratas, vows, shnan, baths, huta, fire sacrifices. But then they say samarchita ishvara, to make the point that in themselves, so vows is generally fasting, but it could be other vows, but they say in themselves, fasting or bathing or performing fire sacrifices will not lead to Krishna unless samarchita ishvara, unless they're used to perfectly worship Krishna. So essentially they're means to an end, and until they're aligned properly to the end, they will give some results. They may give sukriti, pious activities, yogic powers, but when they are samarchita ishvara, then they give bhakti. So implicitly what they are saying is that the queens in Dwarka are much superior to us. So this is the ladies of Hastinapur saying, they're much superior to us. We have not performed this austerities. But nevertheless, by some good fortune, Krishna is right here, right in front of us. Let us drink the nectar of his heavenly sight right now. Now, another interesting part that comes through this verse is that we see that in the same verse, these ladies, so firstly, they have made this giant jump from Shantaras to Madhurya Bhav. Now, even within Madhurya Bhav, they talk about two flavors. They're talking about the queens in Dwarka, which is Swakiya, and they're talking about the gopis in Braj, which is Parakriya. And apparently in the verse, they're holding the queens to a higher as higher recipients of the mercy, because they're saying that the queens are actually receiving the kisses from Krishna, but the gopis, they can only think about it, and when they think about it, they actually faint. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that factually they are saying the opposite. So the point that they're making is that when they describe the mood of the gopis, so they say yad ashaya, asha means like what does Asha mean? Asha is a Hindi word also, right? So I want something, like desires. So yat ashaya. So when their mind is completely absorbed in this asha, in this desire of adhar amritam, of the sweetness of Krishna's lips, then samamohur, then they faint. So Vishwanath Chakravarti makes the point that for the queens of Dwarka to experience the sweetness of Krishna's lips, they actually have to physically engage in it. The gopis are so advanced that even if Krishna is not personally present over there, they actually reach a much higher state. So when they were talking about the queens, they didn't talk about the queens fainting. The queens were relishing the nectar of Krishna's lips, and after they were physically experiencing it, but the gopis, they even though they are not physically experiencing it, the the uh, the ecstasy that they feel is far superior to that of the queens of Dwarka. So that is why what they're saying, Vishnu Chakravarti says, is that actually they are glorifying the gopis as much more advanced uh, than the ladies of Hastinapur in terms of the intensity of their attraction to Krishna. Um, so the prayers, they end in verse 31, and I would like to finish the prayers over here. If it may take away our discussion time, but if it is okay, the other three verses are not very long. So if it is okay with you, I'll just go through the other three verses and finish the prayers, and then we can start the other part of that's the end of the chapter, end of this prayers part of the chapter. So we will do verse 29. Ya virya sulkena rita swayamvare pramatya chaiditya pramukhan hi sushmenaha pradyumna shambhava sutadya para yas chaharta bhauma vade sahasrasha. The children of these ladies are Pradyumna, Samba, Amba, etc. Ladies like Rukmini, Satyabhama, and Jambavati were forcibly taken away by him from their Swayamvar ceremonies after he defeated many powerful kings headed by Shishupal. And other ladies were also forcibly taken away by him after he killed Bhaumasur and thousands of his assistants. All these ladies are glorious. So why are they further glorifying, or what are they saying to further glorify the ladies? And here the ladies are speaking something that is, I guess, it's they're revealing a feminine trait that women like when men fight over them, and so they're basically talking to that aspect of Krishna. That it's not that he just went and married this; he actually fought for them. That's what makes them even more glorious. So it's not that there was an advertisement in Hindustan Times and Krishna applied for it and then the marriage was done, but he then, and they talk about Shishupal, which is Rukmani's marriage. He had to fight so many warriors. Rukmini followed him all the way, halfway to Dwarka. Shishupal and so many other uh, warriors fought with him. For Satyabhama, Krishna had to do all the things with his father Satrajit, right? To the whole Kastubmani pastime. For Jambavati, he fought with her father Jambavan for 28 days. He fought, and then after that, he recognized and gave his daughter. So lot of virya, lot of chivalry. So this, as women, this is something, and these are women who are predominantly in Shringara Ras. If they were in motherly ras, they would say, don't fight, you might hurt yourself. this girl is definitely not worth it. I'll find a better girl for you. But these are girls who are who are themselves in that Shangaras. So they're appreciating that fact. That in order to get these wives, he fought with so many, and then they end with talking about Bhaumasur. That the greatest battle, one of the greatest battle he fought was with his own son, Narkasur. And before he fought with Narkasur, he fought with who was the demon in front of his Mura demon, right? He fought with Mura demon, the 7 sons of Mura, then the thousands of assistants, and then he fought with Bhaumasur, and then he married the 16,000 wives. So they are saying that. So now, if you note in this verse, they are not saying Krishna is glorious. They have already done that part, but they are saying the wives are glorious because the Supreme Personality of Godhead fought for them. That makes them glorious. Okay, next verse. Etah param stritvam apastapeshalam nirasta saucham bata sadhu kurvate yasham grahat pushkara lochanaha patir na jatva paitya aharit bir hridis prashan. All these women auspiciously glorified their lives despite their being without individuality and without purity. Their husband, the lotus-eyed personality of Godhead, never left them alone. He always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. So they start the verse with Eta. Eta is a pronoun. And they ended the previous verse by talking about the queens or the ladies who were rescued from the palace of Narkasur. So this verse is talking about them, the 16,000 queens, the 16,100 queens who were rescued from the palace of Narkasur. And when they say that without individuality, what they mean is that their freedom was curtailed. So they were imprisonment. So these were women who were imprisoned, and then they say nirasta saucham. They had no purity. Not because they were unchaste, but because they were captured by an unchaste person. That this is even after Lord Ram got Sita Devi, then because she was captured by Ravan, he asked her to go through validation. And this is much worse, that they were, for many years, they had been captured by this person with the intent of eventually marrying. So that's why they're saying nirasta saucham. But immediately then they switch, and then they say yasham arahat pushkar lochana patir. That so Krishna did not accept them out of charity. That nobody else can marry you, and you poor girls, let me do it in order to show my magnanimity. But he's saying that he always pleased their hearts by making valuable presentations. He never left them alone at home. Prabhupada at one point said Krishna was a henpecked husband. And so they're further glorifying that even though nirasta saucham, even though these women did not have the purity, but still they're so fortunate that they received Krishna as the personality, the personality of Godhead, as a loving, as a naturally loving husband. So, and Prabhupada, he takes on this verse to make the point that there is no disqualification that is big enough to become an impediment in your relationship to Krishna. That for a woman, chastity is everything. But these women, they were exalted to the position that even the most exalted devotees aspire to attain. They had Krishna as a personal attendant. They had Krishna constantly constantly striving to please them. Why? Because of their devotion to him. So Prabhupada makes the same point. In the same way, regardless of whatever material disqualification we have, if we are able to develop this sense of bhakti for Krishna, we will also attain the same intimate association with Krishna. And uh, this also is the last verse in the prayers. So I'm kind of at the end of it. So I'll stop over here. We'll start with the discussion from 110:31, which is the concluding verses in this chapter. And if there are any questions or comments, we can take them quickly.
Proji, in the purport, Prabhupada says that women are like less intelligent. So I mean, and then there are more others that are still less intelligent, like kirtas, hunas, andhras, those kind of those categories. So is it because of the attachment that makes people, like certain categories of people, less intelligent, or what makes it? What is it exactly that makes certain categories is less than the others?
So you're asking this question when we're out of time. And this is a question that obviously comes very often and has several flavors of answers. Ultimately, if you keep the discussion general, that why is one considered less intelligent than other, it is to a great extent uh, dependent on the intelligence that the person has acquired because of the modes, and it is also to a great extent or to a greater extent on how the person is using that intelligence. And between the two, the second is considered to be more relevant than the first. So so sometimes this point is made that Shudras are less intelligent. Why does one become a Shudra? One becomes a Shudra because of their previous activities, because of the force of karma. They become a Shudra. But then the same point is made that even the Shudra can become a devotee. How is that possible? Because how the person uses whatever intelligence they have. So generally that answer satisfies, I would say, 99% of the situations. What is the intelligence the person has, and more importantly, how that person has chosen to use that intelligence. Does that help, Achyuta?
Yes, Praji. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for letting me off so easily also. Any other questions, comments?
Just a comment, Prabhuji, on the same line that Mataji asked the question. Like in Kali Yuga, like if in the scriptures it is said Shudra, women, and everyone is not intelligent, and everybody by birth is Shudra in Kali Yuga. So we are all equally disqualified to.
That is true. That is true. That Kalo Shudra Sambhavate, that everybody is Shudra, even though that statement is more reflecting to samskars. I mean, uh, at the end of the day, it kind of boils down to the same thing. But that particular statement is pointing to the fact that people in this age of Kali, they do not go through the purificatory samskars. That makes one, that through samskars, a Shudra becomes elevated to become a Vipra. And through the study of the scriptures, etc., the Vipra becomes a Brahman. So that elevation is there. But yes, I agree with you also that the same point devolves to how the person is using the intelligence that they have been given. In the age of Kali, everybody is using it for, not everybody, but most of the people are using it for material advancements. Okay, thank you very much. So I'll end over here and we'll resume discussion next week. Next chapter is Krishna's entry into Dwarka. And in preparation for that, and I realized it's not enough time, but the chapter actually is, it is also a study of rasa. So as we go through the chapter, we'll also analyze rasas. And from a more technical perspective, now the study of rasas we did not do as part of Bhakti Shastri. They're in the later chapters of the Nectar of Devotion. But if you can at least read the 20th chapter of the NOD, which is a summary of the rasas, that would help me. So I'll also try and bring you up to speed as briefly as possible. And later on, when we read the verses, we'll apply the science of rasas to the verses to understand it. But if you can read the 20th chapter, it'll help me that you have some kind of background. Okay, thank you. I'll end over here. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nithai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.